Today we're taking a look at these UFC fights, which are happening on Saturday, March 18, 2023, and giving you our picks for today. Welcome back to High Stakes. Before we dive into our video, don't forget to subscribe and push that notification bell to get notified as soon as we release these sport prediction videos, and make sure to watch it till the end so you don't miss any of our picks. Also check out our Patreon if you want access our premium picks. Our Patreon is a way for us to help you improve your chances of making more money. You will find the link in description and comment section below. One more thing before we start, check out our new channel High Stakes Props and Parlays, where you can find our player props and parlay picks predictions. You will find the link in the description and comment section below. Gunnar Nelson vs Bryan Barberena. The last time he stepped into the octagon, Gunnar Nelson went up against Takashi Sato and ended up winning this fight by unanimous decision in round 3. Sato landed 16 of 34 total strikes attempted in that contest. Nelson finished this fight landing 140 of 166 total strikes. When it comes to significant strikes, Sato ended up landing 9 of 23, giving him a percentage of 39%. He landed 4 of 16 significant strikes to the head. On the other side, Nelson landed 80% of his significant strikes by sticking 44 of 55. Looking at the significant strike accuracy, he landed 36 of 47 to the head. 100% of the significant strikes connected on by Sato and 22% of them landed by Nelson were done at a distance. In the last fight for Bryan Barberena, he squared up with Rafael dos Anjos and was defeated via rear naked choke in round 2. Anjos ended up connecting on 15% of his significant strikes at distance, and Barberena ended up connecting on 71% of the significant strikes he attempted from distance. Barberena connected on 48% of his significant strikes attempted by landing 14 of 29. He ended up connecting on 6 of 18 significant strikes directed at the head. Anjos landed 20 of 25 significant strikes in that contest. In regard to the placement of these significant strikes, he ended up landing 3 of 8 to the head. In terms of total strikes thrown, Anjos connected on 36 of 41 and Barberena landed 61 of 79 total strikes. Our pick is Gunnar Nelson. Juliana Miller vs Veronica Macedo. The last time she fought, Juliana Miller fought Brogan Walker and took home the win by way of an elbow to the head in round 3. Walker landed 52 of 74 of the strikes she threw in total in this fight. Miller finished this fight landing 110 of 156 total strikes. In the significant strikes category, Walker landed 30 of 48, which gave her a percentage of 62%. She ended up landing 16 of 33 significant strikes to the head. On the other side of the cage, Miller landed 63% of the significant strikes she threw by landing 54 of 85. Looking at the significant strike accuracy, she was 43 of 72 pointed at the head. 93% of the significant strikes landed by Walker and 46% of them landed by Miller were tallied at a distance. In the last fight for Veronica Macedo, she squared up with B. Malecki and was on the losing end of this fight by way of unanimous decision in round 3. Malecki ended up connecting on 82% of her significant strikes at distance, while Macedo ended up landing 96% of the significant strikes she tried at a distance. Macedo connected on 36% of the significant strikes she attempted by connecting on 93 of 258. She ended up connecting on 67 of 213 significant strikes directed at the head. Malecki ended up landing 130 of 247 significant strikes in that contest. Out of those significant strikes, she landed 92 of 191 directed at the head. In relation to total strikes that she let go, Malecki connected on 190 of 326, while Macedo was 106 of 271 of all the strikes she threw. Our pick is Juliana Miller. Jack Shore vs Makwan Amirkhani. In his previous bout, Jack Shore squared up with Ricky Simon and was on the losing end of this fight by an arm triangle in round 2. Simon landed 46 of 59 total strikes attempted in that fight. Shore ended the night having landed 27 of 52 total strikes. In terms of significant strikes, Simon ended up landing 25 of 38, which gave him a rate of 65%. He landed 13 of 25 significant strikes aimed at the head. On the other side of the cage, Shore ended up landing 43% of his significant strikes by sticking 19 of 44. Of those significant strikes, he connected on 15 of 40 pointed at the head. 72% of the significant strikes connected on by Simon and 89% of them connected on by Shore were done at a distance. In the last octagon appearance for Makwan Amirkhani, he battled Jonathan Pierce and walked away in defeat via a punch to the head while on the ground in round 2. Pierce ended up landing 17% of his significant strikes at distance, and Amirkhani ended up landing 100% of the significant strikes he attempted from distance. Amirkhani ended up landing 50% of the significant strikes he attempted by landing 11 of 22. He ended up landing 9 of 19 significant strikes aimed at the head. Pierce landed 90 of 112 significant strikes in that fight. Looking at the significant strike accuracy, he landed 75 of 94 directed at the head. In relation to total strikes attempted in that fight, Pierce ended up landing 144 of 178, while Amirkhani was 12 of 23 of all the strikes he threw. Take Jack Shore. Jake Hadley vs Malcolm Gordon. In his previous bout, Jake Hadley faced Carlos Candelario and took home the win via triangle choke in round 2. Candelario ended up landing 69 of 148 total strikes attempted in that fight. Hadley walked away from this fight having landed 107 of 188 total strikes. In regard to significant strikes, Candelario ended up landing 69 of 148, which gave him a percentage of 46%. He ended up landing 31 of 100 significant strikes aimed at the head. On the other side of the cage, Hadley landed 53% of his significant strikes by connecting on 90 of 169. In regard to the placement of these significant strikes, he connected on 45 of 118 aimed at the head. 97% of the significant strikes connected on by Candelario and 72% of them connected on by Hadley were thrown at a distance. In the last fight for Malcolm Gordon, he faced off with Muhammad Makiev and took a loss on the night by an armbar in round 3. Makiev ended up connecting on 42% of the significant strikes he attempted at distance, while Gordon connected on 29% of his significant strikes at distance. Gordon ended up connecting on 44% of the significant strikes he attempted by connecting on 17 of 38. He landed 15 of 35 significant strikes to the head. Makiev ended up landing 21 of 30 significant strikes in that contest. Out of those significant strikes, he connected on 13 of 22 directed at the head. In regard to total strikes that he let go, Makiev ended up landing 119 of 130, and Gordon ended up landing 38 of 62 of the strikes he threw in total. Take Malcolm Gordon. Chris Duncan vs Omar Morales. In his last appearance in the octagon, Chris Duncan faced Charlie Campbell and wound up getting the win by a punch to the head in round 1. Campbell ended up landing 16 of 37 total strikes that he threw in that fight. Duncan ended the night having landed 15 of 35 total strikes. Concerning significant strikes, Campbell ended up landing 16 of 37, which gave him a percentage of 43%. He ended up landing 8 of 28 significant strikes aimed at the head. On the other side of the octagon, Duncan ended up landing 42% of the significant strikes he threw by landing 15 of 35. Of all the significant strikes, he landed 8 of 25 pointed at the head. 87% of the significant strikes landed by Campbell and 86% of them landed by Duncan were done at distance. In the last octagon appearance for Omar Morales, he went up against Euros Medic and walked away in defeat via punch to the head in round 2. Medic landed 95% of the significant strikes he tried at a distance, while Morales ended up connecting on 96% of the significant strikes he tried at a distance. Morales ended up landing 38% of the significant strikes he attempted by landing 33 of 85. He ended up landing 18 of 64 significant strikes directed at the head. Medic landed 47 of 86 significant strikes in that fight. Out of those significant strikes, he landed 21 of 57 directed at the head. Relating to total strikes attempted in that fight, Medic ended up landing 47 of 86, while Morales landed 33 of 85 total strikes. Take Omar Morales. Leon Edwards vs Kamaru. In his previous bout, Leon Edwards faced Kamaru Usman and ended up getting the win via kick to the head in round 5. Usman landed 189 of 247 total strikes attempted in that fight. Edwards ended the night having landed 64 of 85 total strikes. In the category of significant strikes, Usman ended up landing 83 of 135, which gave him a percentage of 61%. He finished the fight landing 61 of 109 significant strikes to the head. In terms of stats for the opponent, Edwards ended up landing 73% of the significant strikes he threw by landing 55 of 75. In regard to the placement of these significant strikes, he was 20 of 38 to the head. 55% of the significant strikes landed by Usman and 76% of them landed by Edwards were thrown at a distance. In the last bout for Kamaru Usman, he went up against Leon Edwards and ended up walking away in defeat by a kick to the head in round 5. Edwards connected on 76% of his significant strikes at distance, and Usman connected on 55% of the significant strikes he attempted from distance. Usman ended up landing 61% of the significant strikes he attempted by connecting on 83 of 135. He connected on 61 of 109 significant strikes aimed at the head. Edwards ended up connecting on 55 of 75 significant strikes in that contest. In terms of accuracy for the significant strikes, he landed 20 of 38 to the head. Relating to the strikes he fired off in this contest, Edwards ended up landing 64 of 85, while Usman ended up connecting on 189 of 247 of the strikes he threw in total. Take Leon Edwards. Jai Herbert vs Ludovic Klein. In his previous bout, Jai Herbert went up against Kyle Nelson and wound up getting the victory via unanimous decision in round 3. Nelson landed 55 of 77 total strikes that he threw in that contest. Herbert finished this fight landing 84 of 116 total strikes. In terms of significant strikes, Nelson landed 41 of 62, which gave him a rate of 66%. He ended up landing 15 of 34 significant strikes to the head. In terms of stats for the opponent, Herbert ended up landing 56% of the significant strikes he threw by landing 36 of 64. In regard to the placement of these significant strikes, he was 16 of 43 to the head. 68% of the significant strikes connected on by Nelson and 61% of them connected on by Herbert were done at a distance. In the last bout for Ludovic Klein, he faced off with Mason Jones and took home the win by unanimous decision in round 3. Jones ended up connecting on 48% of his significant strikes at distance, and Klein landed 62% of the significant strikes he tried at a distance. Klein ended up landing 57% of his significant strikes attempted by connecting on 50 of 87. He connected on 37 of 68 significant strikes directed at the head. Jones connected on 43 of 105 significant strikes in that fight. Of all the significant strikes, he connected on 16 of 70 aimed at the head. Regarding total strikes that he let go in that contest, Jones ended up connecting on 78 of 141, while Klein landed 70 of 112 total strikes. Take Jai Herbert. Muhammad Maqeed vs Jafal Filho. In his last appearance in the octagon, Muhammad Maqeed fought Malcolm Gordon and got a win for the night by an armbar in round 3. Gordon landed 38 of 62 total strikes attempted in that fight. Maqeed finished this fight landing 119 of 130 total strikes. Concerning significant strikes, Gordon landed 17 of 38, which means his percentage was 44%. He landed 15 of 35 significant strikes directed at the head. In terms of stats for the opponent, Maqeed landed 70% of his significant strikes by sticking 21 of 30. Out of all the significant strikes thrown, he landed 13 of 22 pointed at the head. 29% of the significant strikes landed by Gordon and 42% of them connected on by Maqeed were thrown at a distance. In the last bout for Jafal Filho, he faced off with Roybert Echeverria and got a win for the night by a punch to the head in round 3. Echeverria ended up connecting on 55% of the significant strikes he tried at a distance, while Filho ended up connecting on 65% of the significant strikes he tried at a distance. Filho ended up connecting on 42% of his significant strikes attempted by landing 29 of 68. He landed 18 of 53 significant strikes to the head. Echeverria ended up landing 34 of 64 significant strikes in that contest. Out of all the significant strikes thrown, he connected on 9 of 24 aimed at the head. When discussing total strikes attempted in that fight, Echeverria ended up landing 38 of 68, while Filho ended up landing 36 of 81 of all the strikes he threw. Take Muhammad Maqeed.